So far in the year, the Nasdaq is down about 17%, and since Liberation Day, you've seen some of those worst stretches of this entire century. But in this video, I'll show you to take advantage of dropping asset prices so you can come up on top on their side. Let's go straight into it. So for me personally, it's been a pretty turbulent start to the year. As of lately, I've seen my portfolio drop nearly $12,000 in single days. And to start the year, I'm down nearly $60,000 in this portfolio in particular. But I'm honestly not too worried about it. Here's why. So I've said it a lot here on this channel. I'm a long-term investor. So in this portfolio in particular, I'm not really too concerned about it because I have a 20 to 30 year time horizon. Some of you guys hear the word long-term and think 2 to 3 years. But my mindset when it comes to long-term investing is actually 20 to 30 years. I'm looking to hold the stocks I have right now in my portfolio. So I'm pushing 40, 50, 60 years old. I have really no plans of selling them unless it's like a name like AMD where there's obviously some issues going on within the company. So especially right now in this period when I see dropping stock prices, it really doesn't bother me at all because I've seen 2022. I know everything that comes along with a dropping stock market, fear in the market, people panicking, stuff like that. But like I said, especially now, I have really nothing to panic about because I've prepared myself for times like this. Well, yeah, seeing your account drop $60,000 can be tough to look at for some people, but knowing myself and knowing where I've come from and knowing everything I've been able to do financially, I'm not really too panicked about it because I know everything that happens in a downturn. And once we make it out to the other side, it's going to be a great time for stocks and investors. But right now, pretty turbulent times. All I got to do is just delete the app and come back in their time. And one key thing to think about if you're considering selling out right now is the best days typically come within the bear markets. So if you look at this picture right here, 50% of the best days in the stock market came within the bear market. And missing out on those best days in the stock market during the bear market will greatly minimize returns over the long stretch of things. So staying invested right now in these turbulent times is the best thing you can do. Don't panic. Don't consider selling. You just have to hold the line and wait till you can come out on top. Now, if you guys are over leveraged in the stock market, can't really do anything about that, but again, it comes with time and experience. And one of the biggest things for me personally is I learned from 2022 and
I studied, bro.
Well, yes, the crash of 2022 during COVID and the pandemic was pretty scary at first. You recovered pretty quickly, so it wasn't even like a sustained bear market like we saw in 2022. During 2022, if you guys were around, the market dropped in a straight line for nearly 10 months from January through October. So watching your account continually bleed out for months on end was a new experience for myself personally because during the pandemic, you dropped extremely fast and bounced back up almost even faster. But watching your account slowly bleed out for 10 months, that was something different for me, but I took that experience and I learned from it. Now, here's some things I learned from that experience in 2022. So one of the biggest things I did since 2022 up until now is I'm much more diversified in my assets. But during 2022, the majority of my net worth is tied up in stocks. So watching your account bleed out for 10 months straight and also highly reflected with your net worth is something that really took a toll on me. Watching my net worth go from $100,000 down to $60,000 in 10 months, I pretty much gave up all the gains I had from 2021. So watching that was really nerve-wracking. I'm like, wow. No, do I really know I'm doing the stock market? I'm like, maybe I'm not so good at this thing. But then once we came out on the other side of 2022, I'm like, wow, maybe I do understand things. And I was just too over leveraged in the stock market. So that's one thing I've really focused on the last few years. I made sure I have a good balance between my stock portfolio and my other assets outside of stocks, like watches, jewelry, stuff like that. Things that may hold their value, but I'm just not so highly correlated in the stock market. So when you have a drop like now, like we're having, watching my account fall $60,000 is not as big of a hit as it was back in 2022. I'm much more well diversified and my entire net worth is not tied up in single stocks in the stock market. And that's one thing they really emphasize. I'm in a much stronger financial position right now because back in 2022, if the market kept on dropping, I'm like, wow, I have no cash set aside on hand. I have nothing for emergencies. You keep on dropping right now, I might have to consider selling these stocks because I have no cash set aside. But now that I've diversified my assets, I have more cash set aside for emergency stuff like that. There's really no thought of me even panicking some because I have guardrails set for myself where I can't fail. I have cash set aside. I have money in other areas, high yield savings accounts, stuff like that, where it's not actively invested and set aside in case of emergency or anything goes wrong in the market like we are right now. So now I'm in a position where I can deploy more capital in the stock market, buy this dip a bit more aggressively, and not get too over leveraged where I'm feeling like I was in 2022, where I'm out to liquidate my account and pay off other things like debt, etc. And speaking about debt, on the next point here, I've talked about this in prior videos, but being debt-free is one of the best things I could have done for myself financially. Not having a car payment, not having a bunch of credit card debt, high interest credit card debt, student loans, high interest personal loans. I made sure before I moved out to a different city and I took this stock trading thing super seriously and moved across the country away from my hometown. I made sure all my financial obligations like debt were paid off. I had nothing to worry about. I had no bill collectors coming after me looking for stuff like that. So making sure you're debt-free in times of uncertainty like we are right now is one of the best things you can do for yourself. Again, it may be difficult for some people because because they put themselves in bad areas with student loans, big car payments, etc. But for me personally, I knew if I wanted to take trading and investing seriously, I had to remain debt free and make sure I had no debt hanging over my head. That could be a big stressor when it comes to uncertain periods like we're going through right now with tariffs, etc. And going back to 2022, something I've learned since then is history typically repeats itself. The market is always going to go through times of uncertainty where you're dropping down rapidly. People say we're crashing, stuff like that. But just go back and look at any of these times in history, and all these instances where the market looked really bad, things look really grim. People talking about recessions this, recessions that. The market always recovered and went back to new highs within the next decade. So again, going back to my long-term investor mindset, this is why my stocks I buy right now, I'm thinking about myself when I'm 40 and 50. I'm not thinking about right now when I'm 27, what am I gonna do with these stocks? I'm buying these stocks right now in my portfolio for when I'm 30, 40, 50 years old, where I can hopefully thank myself later and take advantage of these opportunities in the market. Because in my mind, just based on stats and history, I think the market will be higher in the next 20 years. If we're lower in 20 to 30 years, again, that's a big anomaly. That's never happened in history. We've had a negative return for 30 years, but hey, in that case, something went wrong and you just gotta accept the loss and move on. At that point, I'll be 50 years old, so if the market's lower, can't really do much about it. Hopefully this whole option drops thing is played out and me and Tyler got a big payout. And again, going back to history repeating itself, in 2022, we saw names like Nvidia dropping down from $300 down to $150 pre-split. And while everyone was talking about, selling Nvidia like at 150, Kathy Woods sold all of her Nvidia stock. She sold for a loss. I was making videos about buying Nvidia at 150 just based off their data centers and AI. And now since then, Nvidia's gone to highs of $1,500 post-split. Crazy. So when the market goes through periods of uncertainty, when things are dropping rapidly, you're not sure what to do, obviously don't fully leverage your whole cash position in the stock market. Slowly buy the dip, dollar cost averaging the good stocks you like. Again, good blue chip stocks like Nvidia, Tesla, etc. Or maybe not Tesla, but Apple, Google, Meta, etc. Good companies that are proven, have a good track record, good leadership, stuff like that. Again, mid-cap names, a bit more speculative, do what you gotta do on those ones. But for me, I'm just buying my same old stocks, Microsoft, Nvidia, same stocks I've talked about here for years and years and years since I hit $100,000. So for me personally, there's no reason to panic because like I said, I made sure all my assets were diversified, not highly correlated in the stock market. Again, more cash this side, more guardrail steps like emergency funds so I don't go through a period of stressing about money like I did in 2022. I made sure I was debt free and like I just talked about. And typically, these down periods we're going through right now often present the best buying opportunities for the long term. So just make sure you guys have that long-term horizon, 10, 15, 20 plus years, as opposed to that 2 to 3 year horizon, which a lot of you guys have, unfortunately. And this is something for me personally I've talked about in videos past, but really something that I really need to work on, especially going back to 2022, was detaching myself from my net worth. Like I kind of talked about, I spent a lot of time in years past, hyperfixating my net worth, trying to get to certain numbers, but that also came with a cost of me not really enjoying life or experiencing new things. So that's why in the video I made a few months ago, I really try to focus on having more experiences, trying out new things, versus hyper-fixating on investing all my money, trying to hit big numbers on the screen, because ultimately, if you have a decent net worth, but that comes with having no fun, no experiences. But in my head, what's the point of having a decent net worth if that comes with having no experiences? You don't really talk to your friends because you're working all the time, stuff like that. So that's kind of been a big shift in my mindset I've had these past couple of years, just kind of overall detaching myself from that number and trying to focus on me personally and doing a bunch of new things I've never done before. Again, like traveling, moving to a new city, moving to my hometown, stuff like that. Making new friends can be challenging, but again, comes with the cost of experiencing new things and taking some risk in life. If I just sat in my hometown of Seattle all my life, didn't meet new people, didn't meet people of different walks of life. But what's the point of making all this money and doing cool stuff if you have no life experiences? You really have no advice to give anybody. You know what I mean? Well, like I talked about in the previous section, but now that I've set myself up in a greater financial position where I'm not constantly looking at my long-term portfolio like, oh, I'm down $4,000, there goes my net worth, it's down 4%. Because I set myself up in a much greater financial position, I really have no stress right now. Yes, it sucks seeing your account drop $60,000, but ultimately, and I know that at some point in the future, the market will go back up higher. We'll all look back at this time like, wow, I should have bought more during this dip, I should have done this, I should have done that. But ultimately, like I said, I've set myself up for the future. I don't really have no panic. I'm not overleveraging the stock market, and I can go on with my life without ever thinking about having to sell my stocks because I've set myself up financially. And there's no stress in my mind about ever getting overleveraged in the stock market and having to liquidate my stocks. So now that one of the big focuses in my life is trying new things, different experiences, and not letting this net worth number define me as a person, stuff like that. It's been really freeing where I don't stress about things like market dropping. I just go on with my life. If the market drops, I just delete the app, set up auto investments and go on with my life. Not letting this portfolio define my day-to-day actions. I can just focus on option drops, building a business, building a personal brand, and go on with my life without panicking, selling, or going through doubt where I did the wrong thing and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, what matters more is the foundation, the habits I built. The market will drop, the market will go higher, the market will go up and down sideways, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the foundation, the habits I built along the way, and everything I've learned and experienced is 2022, so I'm prepared this time. So if you're going through a rough stretch in the market right now, just know you're not alone. Everybody that's investing in the stock stock market's down a lot of money right now. They're down about 15-20%. Sure, some people may be out there trading, making tons of money, but the average person you see, their 401ks are down, their Roth IRAs are down, everything's down in the market right now, so you're not alone. Just don't panic sell. Don't sell at lows. Don't be a dummy trying to sell low and buy high. It makes no sense. The market will go back up eventually. Not sure when it's going to be, but just stay invested in the market and good things will typically happen to you. That's all I can say. So like I said, for me personally, just focus on staying invested, having that good balance between life and your stocks. Don't get too attached to your stocks like I was. Don't make stocks and your net worth your whole personality, your whole thing that defines you as a person. There's a lot more in life than just investing your money in the stock market. Again, for me, I'm trying to experience new things, meet new people, make new friends, travel more. There's a lot more things I'm really focused on as opposed to just letting this whole number and stock market define me as a person. I want to build new experiences and new things to talk about and share with people when I meet them, so it's not just me talking about the stock market and repeat over and over and over. So hopefully you guys found this video beneficial, has some perspective on things regarding the stock market, my outlook on the long term, 10, 20, 30 years in the market. So if you guys enjoyed, be sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video. Peace.